Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today, we are doing another Behind the Design podcast for our brand new Shadowlight Carbon 60 backpack. Now, this is a next generation of our best-selling Shadowlight backpack, and it's been a long time coming. We released the first Shadowlight, if I remember right, in 2020-ish. I'm looking at Brigham here.
Might have been 2021.
Might have been right around in there. So we're about
early 21.
Let's call it 4-ish years of the original Shadowlight, and so it was time for an update after thousands of packs being sold and collecting feedback there, as well as progressions in design and our own abilities to or our own materials and all those things. So that's what this podcast is going to be about, is really digging into the behind the scenes, the deep dive on designing the pack and the thought processes that go into it, what's going to make this pack stand out for you, work really well for you, and just getting into that nitty gritty. So these are some of the most listened to and commented podcasts that we do. So leave us comments. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment there. We definitely answer those both verbally, and we'll bring them onto the podcast for questions. But feel free to reach out with any questions that you do have. But Brigham, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, it's today's a little cooler. I don't know.
It's been a week or two.
I'm glad it's September. It's feeling. I'm ready for autumn. I love summer, but I'm like,
with how hot our summer's been here in Utah and how dry.
Yeah.
I would have thought that trip we did in Colorado on the Colorado Trail would have been like the most miserable trip, but we got a little bit of rain like every day on that one, which made it cool. But here in Utah, it's been blistering hot and dry. Really hot and dry. And then we finally got some rain coming in the last couple weeks, and it really cooled it off. It's been nice. I've been able to get up in the mountains the last couple weekends, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
But how are you feeling about launches? We just launched a couple pieces in the Mountain Pursuit.
Yeah.
We've got this launch, and then we've got one more launch in the near future. So
it's kind of we very recently, did podcast about the Mountain Pursuit clothing pieces. But it still feels like it's been a while since we've had product launches.
It has.
Like we went
kind of when it rains, it pours.
Yeah. So
lately,
so they're concentrated in this like 2-month period. But yeah, aside from that, it's kind of I don't know. It's good to be talking about product launches. It's just it's been a while.
We've had a gap for sure.
Yeah.
So it is way fun. I'm super excited about the Shadowlight. I think a lot of our audience was excited about the Mountain Pursuit pieces, but I might suggest that people are even more excited about the Shadowlights, which is saying something because the Mountain Pursuit line launch broke records for us. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what the Shadowlight does.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's got a big following. It's been a best-selling pack for us, and just a lot of interest in it. So let's walk people through this design process. It's been at least a couple years in the making. Obviously, with anything that we do, it's like you launch it, and almost straight away you pull out your pencil and start taking notes on improvements. Like I think as a designer, you never are not watching and looking to improve anything constantly. So even though it's been 4 years since we launched the Shadowlight, this has been basically a 4-year design project for the next gen. Is a way to look at this.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The process really never ends. Like with a brand having to release products, at some point you have to say, you have to like put a stop to something and put a logo on it and sell it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But really the process really doesn't ever end, we're always we always want to improve our product without making our customers like guinea pigs, but on the design side, it's a never ending thing. Constantly looking and listening, looking at what I see and listening to what other people see, and
Yeah. So when we released the Shadowlight, it was really the first backpack that you had designed for Outdoor Vitals that was like a complete brand new pack. And so like meaning that you started that design project, not me. And so there were some theories behind that pack, or I guess concepts that we wanted to introduce there. And those will kind of stay the same. So let's go back to what that pack really was in its infancy, and what was the market? What was the purpose of that pack from day one that again hold true to this pack?
Well, that we at that time we really wanted to have a very good entry, meaning our first kind of entry into the ultralight pack category. And like we understand that there's no definition of what that is, but we kind of created what we wanted to bracket in our parameters, like as we wanted the pack to be 2 pounds or less. We wanted the pack to be an approachable pack for maybe somebody coming from a more just traditional type backpacking pack that might be a bit heavier, bulkier, that might have, more pockets or organization or access. And so we wanted the pack to be approachable from somebody coming from there, but also be just as intuitive to the person that's already, really been doing this thing for years. And so we wanted it to be an attractive option there too. And so that meant a balance of access, pocketing, organization type things, and keeping it 2 pounds or under. That places kind of some guidelines of what you can do with those things: access, pocketing, and organization. And but we also wanted the pack to be, to properly carry a load. Like that was a big thing for us, was designing the pack to properly, to comfortably support a reasonable load that target user would have. And that could be a 10-pound base weight, and that ends up being a 20-pound pack on the trail, and that could be a 15, something that ends up being 35 pounds on the trail. We wanted to be able to accommodate that and have a comfortable pack to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, for sure, on the weight carry. I think, like, for us, when we were setting out, like, weight carrying is super important to us to get right, because let's face it, out here in the West, you sometimes can be doing bigger pushes between stops, between resupplies. You can be carrying more water because it's dry desert or high desert. And then, I'll throw this out there, but like every time I go on a long trail, there's a lot of people out there that maybe have an ultralight pack and it is packed to the brim. And, when some of these packs on the ultralight side, like when they don't have frames, or you don't have as many options to make that pack comfortable, let's just say, because they skimp on features and abilities, that ends up just being an uncomfortable pack. And so for us, we wanted to make it, a pack that could really carry the weight well, regardless of whether you've got 5 pounds in there or 35, 40 pounds in there. So, and all of those aspects have remained true with the Shadowlight. When we went to redesign this pack, we did not want to erase anything that made this pack great. We really only wanted to keep everything that was great, and fix or improve upon, I should say, anything that either we got feedback on, or we ourselves, decided to modify from our own, hundreds of miles on the trail with this thing.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, it's anytime you look at touching, an existing product, there's decisions have to be made, but some of those decisions are almost kind of like a position, right? And so, like with the Shadowlight, it has been consistently one of our best-selling products, volume-wise, and so tells us something about that pack. People are drawn to. They appreciate it. There's certain benefits to that pack that people find value in. And so when we look at updating a product, we're making kind of like a generational update. It's pretty important to not just deviate very far from that original platform or architecture, whatever you want to call it. So like with the Shadowlight, we wanted to keep the Shadowlight a Shadowlight. The things that make a Shadowlight, work so well for a lot of people, like we wanted to add meaningful improvement without really like completely changing what the Shadowlight is and just maintaining the name.
Yeah. So starting with some of the similarities that we wanted to keep, going back to that organization aspect, the Shadowlight has those upper side pockets, the back divided pocket, the zipper entry into the main compartment. Those are all things that had a lot of positive feedback. I mean, again, not every backpack is for everyone, and there's some people that maybe don't like that center zip into the pack or things like that. That's fine. There's other packs that we make. There's other packs out there. I will say this maybe quickly. There is a lot of like, oh, that's a failure point on a backpack. Zippers have been used into main compartments on packs for a lot of years. And in our own warranty department of thousands of packs that we have sold, we've never had a failed zipper on a Shadowlight. So just wanted to note that. That's why we're continuing to use this, as it's not been a failure point in thousands of packs. But it is freaking useful. And I'll touch base on that when I talk about some of the testing and use we've had of this pack even recently. Yeah. So access, organization are things that we wanted to keep in the pack. We just talked on the load distribution aspect. So basically what that means is that we want to continue to refine the harness system, the hip belt system, but also keep our full-sized frames in it, right? We don't want a 17, 18-inch frame that doesn't allow us to get a proper load lift angle on those upper straps and the things that are required to shift weight down to the hips in a meaningful way. So, we're going to keep a solid full-size frame on the pack. Those are the big ones. Those are the big ones. We wanted to keep it under 2 pounds still, which was a goal with the original Shadowlight, is keep it sub 2 pounds. Am I missing anything? Things that we go over things that we just kept the same, things that we changed. But fabric-wise, we've got a lot of miles, a lot of testing, talked to a lot of people out there that have used this pack for thousands of miles, got packs back to us that have gone through fold-through hikes, and we didn't have any reservations on the main Robic nylon fabric with the Spectra in it. That held up extremely well. If someone somehow did happen to find a way to make a hole in that fabric, the Spectra just absorbed it, held that pack together, made it totally functional. However, the mesh was a little bit harder to last thousands of miles, and so we did touch on that, which we'll get to. I think those are the main concepts that we didn't want to touch, didn't want to mess with. It was working great, positive feedback. So this is a pack, though, that as I've done some videos recently for marketing purposes, we've touched a lot of this pack. Like minor refinements that make a massive overall improvement. Yeah. So do you want to start with the minor stuff or the major stuff?
I don't know. I don't care too much. Really,
let's start with the smaller stuff. Let's start with the tweaks, I guess, before we get to the harness.
There are some small tweaks. So on the backpack, on the sides, there's 2 pockets on each side. There's the lower pocket that we commonly refer to just like the water bottle pocket, and then there's an upper side pocket, and we basically increased the volume of that upper side pocket just to make it more usable.
More usable, especially when the pack is full.
When the pack is full. So more volume added so that you can, for those that want to, can put more things in there that they can easily access for whatever reason. any given point on their trip, without pushing that into the main body of the pack. And then we also refined the kind of the cinch cord, how that functions. Just little things like that after using something for so long, and having open eyes and ears to improving them, those are just little things that come about, that we feel good about adding or updating with the new Shadowlight. So I think it's a small tweak, but it's noticeable, like how easy that pocket cinches up and the extra space. So
yeah. So for quick reference, probably the easiest thing I can describe that I like to put in those upper pockets is a Tokes 550 milliliter pot. I've always liked to keep my cook system up in that one of those top side pockets. I could get it in the old one. I was often kind of pushing in on the pack and wedging it down in there, and it was really tight. The new one, I can slide it in there with ease when it's full and actually tuck more stuff down and around it. So volume-wise, I don't know what percentage. You might know what percentage, but at least like a 50% increase in volume, it seems like.
Yeah, maybe not quite that much, but that's a lot. Like a 50% increase is a lot, but it's very noticeable.
It's a noticeable difference. We also added drain ports.
Yeah, I just made sure everything that has a pocket on the exterior, not counting the stretch mesh, but yeah, all the side pockets do have little drainage ports at the bottom.
Sticking with the pocket theme, we refined maybe or tweaked a little bit on the bottom pocket.
Just the
volume got a little bit bigger.
Volume and the expansion of the opening is tweaked a little bit more.
It's more on an angle now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's more so.
These are the water bottle bottom pockets.
As you're wearing the backpack, the back corner of the pocket has been raised up a little bit. That helps retain the water bottles when you're taking the pack off for lunch, or for example, you set it down. It helps retain that or contain your water bottles
for
better.
Size. Yeah, and for size reference, you could get 2 1-liter smart water bottles in each of the previous Shadowlight. Now you can still get those in there, but they're just easier to slide in and out. There's more wiggle room. It's not like and which is nice when you're actively hiking, because you can easier pull them in and out while hiking versus kind of like fighting it while you're hiking if it's a little bit overly tight.
Yeah.
Top strap. We went from a more or less a single top strap to a more of a Y strap, and we did also add quite a bit of webbing up there for people that were using the full amount, I guess, of the upper roll top on the bag.
Yep.
Maybe even so I think more or less you can have that rolled all the way up, and then still have just a little bit of extra room there. So there's just more space up there for sure. If you're putting things on top of your pack or just using the full volume. This is a small tweak, but it's just a nice tweak too, which is we added little, just call them lash points, little pieces of webbing. They're very light, very minimal, but little pieces of webbing around the pack so that if you wanted to strap things to, let's say, the bottom of the pack, which we don't really recommend, but for load carry and comfort, but there are lash points there. There's lash points up the sides, and it just gives you the ability to, let's say you were going to carry a tripod along the side, so you're going to not use the upper side pocket. It's a taller tripod. You'd have another point if you wanted to clip on something, which essentially, I'll just throw this out there as kind of a hack. If you were to use even our Coda UL accessory straps, those would easily clip in and be adjustable for something like this. You can use string, you can use whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, they're just little webbing loops placed kind of along the sides, the bottom part of the back of the backpack. And yeah, I would describe it as just to allow people the ability to improvise in like these rare occasions. I do not consider them something that I want people to go out and think, oh, now there's lashing loops. Now I can just pile a bunch of more stuff on the outside of my backpack. This is an ultralight backpack. That's what it's for. So we're not trying to encourage yard sales strapped down to the back of the backpack. But it does allow those. Sometimes there's just trips where there's like a random thing, or if somebody gets injured and they do need to take some weight out of their pack, then you can, improvise things. Like if there's an odd thing that you need to carry one day or for a short distance, then it gives the ability to just, improvise. And those are, just kind of strategically placed. And they're very unobstructive. They're totally out of the way. Like if you're not actually trying to use them, you really don't even notice them.
Yep. And we'll come back to capacity, but let's also talk about the material change that we did on the stretch mesh. So after, getting packs back, our own testing and stuff like that, things happen in the field and you could rip through that mesh. You back into a really sharp tree, you shove a tent stake down in there and it catches funny. Things could happen. And so we wanted to look at a material change for the mesh. We ended up with Ultra Stretch, which is a material that we've been using on the Skyline Fast Pack. And it's been an incredible material for us. Durability is insane. It's
a very durable stretch woven fabric. Very durable.
So we ended up tweaking that, and we volumized that. There is obviously stretch in the Ultra Grid, but we volumized it so that those pockets are still very substantial stretch pockets to be able to put things down inside. If you need to pack a rain fly in there, I pack my rain jacket a lot in there, all sorts of stuff that you want quick access to. It's more than enough space in there. And I think that's one thing when you go with this center zip in the back of this pack, you have to divide that big mesh back pocket that most packs utilize, where we divide them into two. And so sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if my stuff's going to fit in there. There's a ton of space in those stretch pockets.
Yeah.
A ton of space.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, this is like one of the more substantial, like meaningful improvements that, is done by evaluating very well-worn packs or original Shadowlights, looking at what is actually wearing out after 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 miles. And the most wear occurs on those stretch mesh pockets. So it's a no-brainer to just kind of make those indestructible. And if you think about the use case of what we're usually doing, it usually is a case of trying to smash more things in there and get as much out of that stretch as you can. So there's room for error there. There's room to kind of push a little too hard, go a little too far with trying to cram things in there. And so we pretty much just put something that's just incredibly tough, that is like very highly unlikely, unless you're putting like a knife, out of its sheath and just trying to shove that in there. Like it's really hard to damage this fabric. And because we made those pockets, we added more volume to them and also made them taller or deeper. Like you can absolutely fit more things in there. You can still stuff a tent in there, plus more. And it's a bit of peace of mind, honestly. Like when I use them, that's kind of the way I think about it. It's kind of nice that I can use this without worrying about what I'm putting in there and if it's going to do damage.
Yeah. For instance, the first thing comes to mind is, I don't know why, but I've always put my spoon in my stretch mesh pocket. But a titanium long-handled spoon, it's not like they have sharp edges, but they're long, skinny, and
they're abrupt edges. And they're thin.
They're abrupt. And when you're packing stuff down in here, I've always been very conscious to kind of almost put my hand down in there to hold that in place so it still stays vertical as I'm like stuffing one of these pockets clear full. Because sometimes they can turn sideways and start really pushing into the mesh hard. And so that's just an example. Like if you weren't paying attention and you did something like that, you're not going to push a spoon through this material.
Tent stakes. Another like weird one is like a lot of these freeze-dried meals, the packaging have really sharp corners. And that is something that if you're cramming those down into, kind of the previous type of mesh, like you could potentially get one of those sharp corners from food packaging that like starts to push through. And
Yeah.
spreads a hole.
Okay. Let's shift gears. We're going to save kind of the best for last, which is really the carbon flex suspension. But let's talk about capacity wise in this backpack. To my knowledge, it grew a little bit in capacity, but we retained the 60-liter name.
Yeah. It's a few liters bigger everywhere. So like internally, the internal main compartment volume measurement is 49 liters, and then externally, we listed at 15, but it's probably closer to 20. So it's very much over a 60-liter pack, and it's a little bit more than it was.
Yeah. So however you want to look at that on the external side, you're somewhere between like 64 to, plus liters there, up to 69 liters there. So I will say that like there's a lot of packs out there that it almost seems like they round up. We definitely round down in capacities,
Yeah.
and almost underclaim capacity. So this pack, it does have a lot of capacity. I took this pack rafting for 3 days. So you're loading a pack in there, oars, life jacket, all sorts of things. We took it on the Colorado Trail where we had 6 days worth of food. I had space on a 6-day trip still. So if just note that now, like it's a good sized pack, right? The one thing I will say though that I really like about this pack is it doesn't change weight drastically to drop literage, I would say. So even if you got a pack that was, say, this 60-liter, but most of the time you needed a 50, I think you're still it's not too hard to shrink the sides up on this with the compression straps, roll the top down tight, and still hold a very tight, comfortable pack in terms of load carry. Obviously, when I do a 6-day trip like the Colorado Trail this year, you start off with 6 days. It's much more full. By the end, it's much tighter. And that was really simple to just shrink it down, and it retained, it's not going to feel big and bulky, like you say. If you actually look back at our Shadowlight 60 when we had, because on this model, the Shadowlight Carbon 60, we're not doing a 45, whereas in the past we had a 45. That 45 was maybe 2 ounces lighter than the 60.
Yeah.
So it's not a massive difference to take the same identical pack and shrink 5 to 10 to 15 liters out of it. So just something that I wanted to note there. For some of you, you might just be like so happy that the 60-liter has extra. For some of others of you, you might think, I don't know if I'll ever use all that capacity. If you're buying one pack to do it all, I love the Shadowlight 60 because I can take it I take it pack rafting. I take it on 6-day adventures. I take it backpacking with my kids, and I can even if it's an overnighter or a 2-nighter, I can carry a lot of their gear in the pack to help them. It's just a very versatile capacity size, I would say. So,
yeah, and then also the decision to just to update the Shadowlight and just retain the 60-liter model. So everyone's clear, we will no longer be making a Shadowlight 45-liter model. So the only Shadowlight in the future is a 60-liter model. But a lot of that also comes from just trying to learn about our who's using it and what their habits are and what their loadouts are and the volume range that is more common. And then also looking at historical sales of, we sell a lot more Shadowlight 60 liters than 45 liters. And so that those variables don't necessarily hard and fast make the decision, but they definitely influence the decision. And then when you take that information and you reconcile it, or you add it to the fact that it really only is a 1 or 2 ounce difference between packs, then you combine all those, and that really does help make that decision that the 60-liter is, the right pack to just have one model of.
Yeah. And that's not to say, though, that we won't have a smaller capacity pack by a little bit at some point. So, but it just won't carry the Shadowlight name on that. So it makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. With a pack of this size, to have that additional organization is helpful. As you start to get those smaller packs, it becomes a little bit less important to have some of those organization features. So, worth pointing that out. Okay, let's shift gears here and talk about the big updates on this pack, which would be the Carbon Flex suspension system.
Yeah.
Or is there something you want to touch on before that?
I think we're good.
Okay. So with the Carbon Flex suspension system, I'm calling it a system because we didn't just change like one thing in this, and it's worth prefacing this too in terms of this is a backpack. Its primary goal is to carry things for you and stay comfortable all day as you're walking, and so putting a lot of energy and effort into the harness system really matters. It's something that we're very passionate about here at OV because, like, to us, if you kind of principles first design this thing, carrying weight is the number one thing, and so we don't want to skimp. We don't want to, we want to optimize the heck out of this harness system to be incredibly comfortable carrying, and I'm super stoked at how this turned out. So everything was touched on the suspension system. But let's start maybe with the very biggest thing, which is the frame itself. We started the Shadowlight historically was an aluminum tubed frame. And I mean, solid frame, like we didn't have failures or anything with it. But when we went to design another pack, we designed the CS40 and we started experimenting with carbon. And originally the idea with carbon was to save weight. Makes sense. Carbon's really light, really strong. And so we started testing that and we created the CS40 with the carbon fiber stays. But what we learned through more and more miles of that is that it wasn't just the weight that was amazing. It was the ride of the backpack changed. And the best way that I can really describe that is if you think about, say, a longer piece of aluminum or metal and you go to bend that, it's typically much more stiff or abrupt versus if you were to picture something like a carbon fiber fishing pole where it's got a lot of play in it, right? Now, our backpack is not like that kind of playful, but that's a very exaggerated example. But what we found is that because this carbon fiber had just even, let's just say if you're holding the bottom completely solid and it had more like a centimeter or maybe even 2 centimeters of play in it, that translated into a lot of comfort on the trail. And with carbon, it gets progressively more stiff. So as it bends a little bit, it gets more and more stiff. And so it still had the ability to carry the same amount of weights very, very comfortably, but it just moved with your body better. It felt, I don't know why this word always comes to mind when I'm trying to describe it, but it's like a supple feeling. Like it's comfortable and just has a slight give to it, at least a very initial give to it, that makes it really, really comfortable. So after we used that on the CS40, it was really hard for us to go from the CS40 back to the Shadowlight and not notice the difference and be like, oh, I don't want to have this aluminum frame after having the carbon fiber frame. It's like you can't unsee it once you've seen it.
Yeah.
So we made that switch. I feel like we pride ourselves and push a lot for load carry and abilities, and it just made a lot of sense for us to continue to put the energy and effort there, even though carbon fiber is extremely expensive compared to aluminum frames. You're talking like 10 times more expensive to make a carbon fiber frame over aluminum. That's not saying the backpack is 10 times more expensive. That's just saying that's how much we cared about the frame, is that we were literally willing to 10x the price, our costs on a frame, because we feel like you guys will like it that much more carrying the pack.
Yeah. I think on some of the background is I guess learning what we did from the CS40 is actually a very important part of the development of this pack. So developing the CS40, using it, testing it, and then continuing to use that has been a very integral part of the what has evolved into the carbon flex suspension and ended up on the Shadowlight. And it's interesting because actually the first modifications that now looking back became the carbon flex suspension were all tested on a CS40 prototype, like post-production prototype. So I was taking our existing CS40 and making small tweaks to the back panel, to the shoulder straps, to the hip belt, and then we were also looking at updating the Shadowlight, and so I had experience with the very beginnings of the carbon flex suspension before the first prototype of Shadowlight Carbon 60, if that makes sense. So, and that just goes back to the constantly trying to look, listen, and learn with everything that we make. And so the nice thing about that is you can start to just extract lessons and observations and put them into, new product ideas. And that was a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the frame itself is going to come in two sizes right now.
So there's in the backpack there's 2 carbon fiber stays. They come in 2 sizes. The regular size is for like the 24-inch suspension, and then the short size is for like the 22-ish inch suspension.
Something to note that I think is important is not all carbon fiber is going to be the same. You can have a carbon fiber frame system that is a tubular carbon fiber, almost like an arrow shaft. We're using a stay, which is more of a flat
so it's
piece.
A flat bar.
And what that allows us to do is also curve that so that we can get some curvature, helping shift things into the lumbar, the lower back, and just be more comfortable on the back instead of like, if you were to picture strapping like a straight board to your back, you would feel like that's uncomfortable. It's like laying on this hard table that's right here in front of us versus a mattress or something that can curve up into the small of your back and back around. And so we'd use a carbon fiber stay system with curvature in it that we've taken the time and energy to essentially tune the carbon in terms of how much flex we want in it and play and twist and all of that. So
so with that type of carbon fiber structure, it's quite easy to almost kind of dial up a recipe of how much rigidity or flex or twist that you want, because carbon fiber it's layering, right? So you can have stiffer layers in the middle or stiffer layers on the towards the top or the outer edges or outer surfaces of the stay, and that dials in how much flex. But I say how much flex or deflection, but actually at the same time it dials in how much dampening of vibration, shock, and impact there is, and that's like that is part of the comfort that comes with like the carbon flex suspension. The stays do flex, deflect, and give a little bit, but they also absorb or dampen vibration and shock from. We've talked about it before on podcasts, but think of how many steps one takes on a backpacking trip. Like that's a lot of impact. And the carbon fiber absolutely helps dampen that.
Yeah. So along with that, we didn't just want to switch out the frame. More or less, we wanted to take what we learned from the CS40, but also refine it even further.
Evolve it. Yeah.
And so we continued to do that. So things that included were things like, one of the things that took the most time is dialing in foam. I guess we'll stick with foam here for a minute.
Yeah.
So on the last Shadowlight, we had a removable back panel. The removable back panel was a pretty cool concept. It was a pretty cool theory. What we found, though, was that, one, you didn't always want to be taking that pad in and out of your backpack. If you took that pad to sit on it or use it as a foot pad or something like that, it could pick things up. It could pick up pine needles, pine gum, debris, all those kinds of things that then you're putting back on the back of your backpack. And depending on which way you set that pad down, you may be getting a pine needle into the back, into your back or things. So we didn't really love that. The second part, though, was because of the way you design that, or that we had designed it at least, like you could get some shifting of that pad up and down because it's basically a pad that's now strapped into elastic mesh, right? So like is that you essentially pull up the elastic mesh and you slide it in and then, vice versa on the bottom. But what that meant is that as you were sweating throughout the day and movement happening and stuff, that pad could potentially shift around just a little bit. And that can also be something that it could create discomfort essentially over the course of a day. Now, was that every time? No. Was there times that maybe you wanted to like stop and slightly adjust the pad? Perhaps. And so it was one of those things that was just like, it was a bit of a pain point. And then I would also say that in the last 4 years, we've become massive proponents of carrying an 1/8-inch foam pad we sell them now, but just we've become a massive proponent of that. They're just way better for sitting, laying, using in a variety of things. They weigh, 2.5 ounces, but they have way more uses, way more potential uses. So we're just a big proponent of that. And the more that we started to use those, I would go on a trip with a Shadowlight and I wouldn't even remove the back panel. I'd just use the 1/8-inch foam pad because it was just better for what it was designed to do. And so yeah, when we kind of looked at that piece, we're like, you know what? I think the removable back panel, it's not worth the potential downsides of load carry and comfort.
Yeah.
And so we secured the back panel in this time, which then meant that we can start to play more with options such as what foams we're using and how we're going to vent those foams.
Yeah.
So on the back panel, in fact, if you go look at the images on this, you'll be able to, if you look closely, you'll see cutouts throughout the pack that allow for venting and comfort. And then what you won't be able to see, though, is that on the shoulder straps and the hip belts, Brigham did a lot of work on dialing in the foams there. So maybe talk a little bit about what's going on where they can't really see it there.
Yeah, just kind of changed thickness and density of the foam in the hip belt. There's more than one layer in certain parts. So like the shoulder straps was pretty straightforward. They're like we deliberately select a certain thickness and density of foam in the shoulder straps. And a note on that is I'm just not a believer in comfort is accomplished by just adding thickness or softness or whatever, to a shoulder strap or a hip belt. So you're not going to see that we made the shoulder straps an inch thick or anything like that. But if you achieve like good curvature, good contact over the shoulders and across and under the arm, and then use a quality spacer mesh and then dial in the density and thickness, then it's comfortable. In the hip belt, we did a few things with the hip belt, but specifically to foam, just dialed in how thick we want that foam and how dense. And density, basically what that means for the person using it. Density is like it affects how soft it feels or how rigid it feels or how pliable it feels. Obviously, that also affects weight. So we basically balance that, for comfort and stability, honestly, and we'll kind of move into that discussion around the hip belt as well. But specifically to foam, that's what we did.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it's worth mentioning this. Just the fact that we have foam along the back panel, it is in a lot of ultralight packs, that is not the case, right? So there's different ultralight packs out there. So I'm just kind of talking really generals here, but having the regular backpack fabric against your back, it's just not going to be as comfortable. Regular backpack fabric is going to be waterproof typically, which means you have a complete waterproof fabric up against your back that is then sweating and perspiring, and then anything that's in your pack, there's no padding between it. So something could be poking into your back a little bit if you have a bad load or something like that you didn't set up right, or any of those kinds of things, or just the frame itself. Like if you've got, let's say, an aluminum frame that's pushed directly against your shoulder blades, right? Because there's no padding there, it makes an absolute difference, which is why, why we have a piece of foam here. Not every ultralight pack does. We believe it makes a huge difference. It also helps, if you are sweating, it does allow channels for some of that moisture to move a little bit more away from your body or to vent a little bit. Now, there's other venting options out there too that create like massive air gaps on your back. And there's some pros there for some heat exhaustion as well. But when it comes to load carry in particular, having that weight close and next to your back, it is more comfortable to have that weight carried properly versus pushed out and away from your back. So there's different concepts here. Just wanted to touch on why we do this one. It's for load carry comfort. It's for moving that heat and that moisture away from your body. It's so that stuff doesn't potentially jab into your back or just give you like a very, like a frame touching your shoulder blade. And so that's why we particularly really enjoy this back panel on this. Okay, this is probably the next biggest thing in my mind that made one of the most substantial differences besides just moving to a carbon frame, which is what we did in the hip belt. Yeah. With the hip belt, we actually increased the ability for that hip belt to create contact or to contact the hips around you. So you'll notice when you look at the pack now, straight behind your back on the low lumbar where it's touching, like right around your spine, it's almost like a more narrow channel, and then the hip belt starts earlier, I guess is the best way to describe that. What that allows is for whatever body size you are, it can wrap around you easier. If you're more broad, then then the hip belt itself will go out with you. But if you're maybe a very skinny person, it can immediately start to wrap around your hips, and it just gives this really, really good constant contact and gripping ability around the hips. And that is really critical when we're trying to transfer weight off of the shoulders into the frame and down into your hips, which is the purpose of having these frames and the load lifters and everything that we're doing here. So that was really, really apparent for me through the prototyping process. But towards the end of a lot of the prototyping and when we're getting really close to the finished product here, going back to that pack rafting trip that I was on, I was carrying nearly 40 pounds the entire time. So for, I want to say it's about 50 miles, I'm carrying 40 pounds worth of gear, which is a lot more than I typically carry. I'll just put it that way. And I was just so impressed specifically with that hip belt and its ability to just hug the body, not slide down my back. I'm not a guy with like a big butt that helps the backpack stay up essentially. And so it being able to just hold in place so well, even hold in place with maybe a little bit less like cranking on the hip belt straps, if that makes sense, just because it's able to hug the body. It really has been a substantial difference in that. And that really comes from just angles cut, some tweaks that we did there. And it's made a big difference. So anything you want to mention there in terms of additional hip belt changes? We changed the front buckle, but in terms of contact
there's some things about how the hip belt is now sewn that reduces certain kind of pinch points or buckle points or kind of where the hip belt could potentially fold under load. And that is all done kind of, again, I mentioned that balancing the stiffness or rigidity of the foam and where it starts to wrap around the person. The idea there is there's certain points on a hip belt where it can kind of, it'll give. Like it's kind of it's where it'll almost crease on its own under load. And so we wanted to improve that. And that's, done by having more contact of the hip belt farther towards the person's back or more, closer toward the middle of the back, and then the density, thickness of the foam, and then sewing lines, eliminating certain sewing lines that could kind of provoke that buckling.
Yeah. On the front of the hip belt, we went from basically a single strap. So we've always kind of done what's called, I don't know, what we call like a reverse pull, where essentially to tighten the strap, you pull it forward.
Forward pull.
A forward pull. However, with this one, we actually went with a double anchor point, essentially is what you could call this, where it starts on the lower part of the hip belt, goes up through a buckle, and then back to the hip belt again. It's still a forward pull, so it's easy to pull, easy to tighten. You essentially have a doubler in the line, so it's even easier to pull now. But also, it just evens out that contact point. So where the foam ends on the hip belt, you still have kind of a wider webbing channel as it goes towards the buckle, because it's a 2-point system where it's connecting with the buckle or with the hip belt. So that does increase comfort. That's how it's been on the CS40. We've really liked that. We've kept that, basically moved that on to the Shadowlight. And then let's talk about the pockets for a second. We did a small tweak on those that was really nice.
Yeah, we just improved the zipper function of the pocket, kind of shifted the zipper placement a little bit. They just operate one-handed much more smoothly. You really don't have to pay attention or really give it any attention when you're opening or closing those zippers. I believe the volume is about the same. But it's just, the zipper functionality is just way more functional.
You could open and close the old Shadowlight with one hand, but sometimes it was a challenge, and it was quite easy if they were full. But now what I would say with these ones is they're easy to operate one-handed, whether they're full or empty.
Yeah.
And in terms of size, they're large size. The quickest, easiest reference is I mean, at least in like a medium-sized hip belt, I can get a phone in my pocket. I don't like to carry my phone in my pocket. Actually, we have those universal stretch mesh pockets now for the shoulder straps. I love to carry my phone there. It's really easy in and out, and just gets it out of like my pants pocket, where it could be, I don't know, bothering me as I'm hiking or slowing me down or whatever. So
yeah, I use them for, I put my phone in one, usually like a little baggie of snacks in the same pocket as my phone, and then I keep my filter, so a Platypus Quick Draw filter and the bag in the other pocket.
I will say I've gotten at least 500 calories into one hip belt pocket.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're good sized.
You could basically pack your lunch between the two.
Yeah,
the two pockets.
You probably could. Okay, well, that kind of wraps up the Carbon Flex suspension system. Again, huge improvement. In my opinion, it's the number one improvement on this. I would just say, too, like, this is the thing that if you're out there shopping backpacks, this is something to not ignore, is the carbon aspect and the entire harness system, right? The suspension system. But it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Like I say, we've doubled down or 10x what we're willing to do on this, because we think it's that important and that much more comfortable, and that the in the field use will be that much better. So it's absolutely worth your consideration. But overall, the whole pack, like all of these small refinements, just tune this thing up incredibly well. And I would just say, like, we went out on the Colorado Trail, we hiked 135, 140 miles, and 6 days, no resupply. And my initial thought when I loaded up and started day one was that the suspension system is so much more comfortable that it felt like I was carrying 4 days worth of food instead of 6. Like that's like just not that the pack got lighter, right? The pack is basically the exact same weight as it was before. We added, more durable materials. We added some things like in other areas that cost us weight, but moving to the carbon fiber stays frame allowed us to keep the same weight. But what I'm saying is just like, because of the comfort of the pack, it literally makes the thing feel lighter. So, but going on this 6-day trip, some of the thoughts that I had with the Shadowlight is, it's honestly still my favorite pack. I love the zipper. I like the zipper, and I like the upper side organization pockets. Even if I'm not doing something where, like, as someone who tries to be on the more ultralight side of things, even if I'm not using the full capacity of the pack, I love the organization and quick, easy, aspects. I love keeping my pot up in the corner, my water filter up there. I love throwing gloves and your toilet kit up in the upper pocket where it's really accessible. I like throwing my rain gear down one side of the back mesh pocket and just having like those organization aspects I absolutely love about the pack. When I stop for lunch, I really enjoy just laying my pack down and grabbing that zipper, pulling it down and pulling my lunch out of the pack. I don't have to unroll the top and undo the Y strap and those kinds of things. It's just quicker. It's easier. When it starts raining, like if I've got my gloves in an upper side pocket, well, I just literally grab them, zip the zipper down 3 inches, and I shove my gloves into my pack, or those kind of quick things. Like they may not be a deal breaker for some, but because of those things, like they are what make me really drawn to the Shadowlight and just enjoy the use of the Shadowlight. So I guess what I'm saying all in all though is there's a lot of new backpackers that will see this pack and be very drawn to it because it takes some of those traditional backpacking things, such as organization or some pocketing or even like a full-size frame, and it puts it in the pack. But even as someone who's been backpacking for many, many, many years now and logged a lot of miles on trails, I still love this pack. And so I think that's what's so cool about this pack is that it really is for beginners, and it's for just call it a pro level backpacker, an expert level, a longtime backpacker can be very, very happy with this pack. I was super thrilled with it coming off the Colorado Trail. That was kind of like those were basically production run packs at that point instead of just sample packs and prototypes. And so I really enjoyed taking that pack out there, using it, and just seeing it all come together. And I mean, it's still a very I really enjoy the pack for myself. So any last comments on the design process or anything with the Shadowlight? I think we picked through it pretty good here.
I think to sum it up, we wanted to update it in meaningful ways, keep the Shadowlight, keep it a Shadowlight, and the things that people like about it, we wanted to keep, and just wanted to really improve durability, improve the comfort and stability of the pack. Felt like that was how we could really give it a meaningful generational update, but it's still going to be like the pack that anybody else that has already used one or interested in one, like it's very much along those lines.
Yeah. So this podcast should come out the week that this is being launched, so that this is now available. If you want to jump over to outdoorvitals.com and check out all of the nitty-gritty details of the pack and get one ordered up, it is now available. So always fun to see these projects come to life and get your guys' feedback. Super excited to see where you guys take this pack. I love seeing you guys send in all of the photos and videos. We especially see a lot in the OV 100 mile challenge of people out there using stuff, but we get it from all sides, and it's always fun to see where you guys take things. And I'm really excited to see where you guys take this and to just get the feedback on this. I think it's going to be a very popular pack, and perhaps, I think it will be our highest rated pack by users to date. So super excited about that. You'll probably hear us back on the podcast next on an episode of Ask OV. So if you do have questions, make sure to drop those in the comments, write into support, open a chat window, and just say, I've got a podcast question. Or you can also use speakpipe.com/live ultralight, and you can record a audio question for us to answer on the podcast. So make sure you guys are continuing to submit those. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys coming on. Rate and review the podcast. Share it if you would, and we'll catch you on a future episode.